13012 to require law enforcement agencies to report the number of civilian complaints reported by youth disaggregated by youth who are 17 and younger and youth who are 18 to 24. The reporting requirement would include complaints filed by a third party on behalf of someone 24 or younger. Any thoughts on this one? Board Member Sierra?
It's just a simple wordsmithing. On the first sentence, when we're saying by youth who are 17, should we say by or on behalf of youth who are 17? I guess that, I don't know if that's what the last sentence is getting at, but that might be add a little clarity.
Mm-hmm. And then are you suggesting that we would then be able to eliminate the last sentence?
I think so, but I don't have a strong feeling about that. I mean, I don't know if that was, if I'm missing what else that could include. It seems like it might be redundant.
Or maybe end the sentence after a third party.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because it may somebody, yeah, maybe just have filed by a third party, period.
Yeah. Any other thoughts around this suggestion? Okay, let's move on to the second. Municipalities and law enforcement agencies modify their complaint forms to include a drop-down box to record if the complainant is 17 and younger or 18 to 24. Board Member Smith.
Yes. Here, I'm wondering why not just go with asking the person or having the person provide their age specifically, as opposed to a drop down, because if we have the age, then you can always back end your way into any categories that you want to use. And then it also allows you to look at things more granularly if you want to.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I'm not sure what the thinking here was from the committee or DOJ about categories versus age.
Good afternoon, board members. The thinking around that recommendation was to allow the collection of the data. Right now, law enforcement agencies have to report complaint data. And the idea is to allow them to be able to report data for specific age groups, for 17 and younger and 18 to 24. So it's not about necessarily backing into and looking at the data and trying to unwind it, but just having the data be collected in that way and reported in that way so it can be easily evaluated.
Thank you. Any additional thoughts on this? Board Member Randolph?
Thank you so much, and thank you, DOJ, for commenting on that. So I just want to confirm that we're going to require the 400 agencies in the state to modify how they take their complaints so we could collect the data and be more consistent on the data collection, but yet we haven't modified our data collection on DOJ's side to identify when it comes to youth. If we make an arrest, because that's a question that I've been drilling for the last year, is if we made an arrest, and that's been a concern. And I was told at several meetings that that's going to take some time. But I mean, if we're going to throw this out to law enforcement in front of the assembly, I mean, are we at least going to meet them halfway, as well as DOJ willing to make the modifications as well? Is this board willing to take that consideration? That was all. Thank you.
Board Member Randolph, thank you for your question. Currently, in collecting the complaints data and reporting the complaints data, there is a box for racial profiling as to whether or not a complaint deals specifically with racial profiling. requiring a drop-down box for 17 to monitor youth, really in interactions and complaints filed by youth. It would probably be along the same lines in terms of the burden, but it would allow easier tracking of whether or not there are issues with youth and policing. And so that in terms of your question about or concerns about whether or not DOJ, we can, I'm not sure I'm following what the concern is, but if you can restate what that concern is for me, please.
Absolutely. Sorry, Andrea, I just wanted to clarify this for her. So in the past, we've been talking about this entire meeting when we're talking about youth, we're talking about uses of force, and we're talking about the disparity and issues that have occurred with youth. But my question was an arrest that was made. If there was a use of force, because we were talking about uses of force earlier, and they weren't up, but they were relatively high. Was a use of force? How did that use of force happen? And was there an arrest that got us to that use of force? And I was told in the last year now, we don't have that data, and it's been pitched that can we start collecting that data as well? That's where I was coming from. Did I clarify that?
Yes, there
Okay.
is. If you look at the updated draft, based on your comments at one of the subcommittee meetings, there was a graph that was included that maps out your concerns about what occurs during a stop. And I can email you or send you that page number where that graph is located, but that was included in the updated draft.
Okay, so we're we're talking about two things related, but one is a complaint form, which is separately required in state law, complaint data collection, and for data collection purposes, having these categories to allow the complainant to identify in a category that would facilitate data analysis. And then I hear Board Member Randolph talking about the importance of if we're going to start looking at these categories to also be reflecting them in the collection analysis of use of force data. So I think the latter is not part of this section or this complaint or this committee or the state mandate to collect complaint data. And so want to just inquire whether anyone has any additional thoughts on this category. Board Member Smith, you're the one that originally raised some questions about this. Is there anything more that you want to add? And yeah.
I think no, I don't have anything else to add. I'm just kind of pondering a little
Okay.
bit. But I don't have like a strong opinion, to be honest. So I
Okay.
see here it's it's the categories, and I'm taking this as we need these categories would be helpful so that when the data is aggregated and sent to the DOJ, you can run analysis based on these categories.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct?
Yes, that's what was shared with us.
Okay. So what I was getting to and asking the original question is that the categories are pretty broad. So in the instance that someone was interested, it could also be helpful to know how old the person is. For example, if someone is 5 years old and they got handcuffed and they have a complaint in relationship to that incident versus if that person was 17, I think that could be interpreted quite differently. But without having that information being captured, it would just be 0 to 17, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I was saying, or I was asking a question, would it be more helpful to just ask for the age to be provided. And if you have the age of each person that is submitting the complaint, you can back end your way into whatever categories you want to use.
Mhm. Yes, thank you. Any additional insights, thoughts around this from DOJ or board members?
Would you, just to clarify, Board Member Smith, would you like to amend or add an additional recommendation to include the age of a complainant on the complaint form?
Yeah, that would be my, yes. Yeah.
Okay. Board Member Sierra?
See, I have a quick question of law enforcement. Is it already a requirement that law enforcement agencies accept complaints by minors, or do we need to clarify that they must accept complaints by minors?
And
Is there a board member from law enforcement? Board Member Bianco?
Yes, thank you. No, it is a requirement that we accept all complaints. It doesn't matter who you're coming, we accept anonymous complaints. It's,
Mhm.
so age is absolutely nothing. I mean, it may have a different relevance if a 5-year-old fills out a complaint form, but there is nothing on there that we require their age, and we would not turn away a complaint just based on somebody being a minor.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Okay. I saw
And
a
what-
board member, I just missed it. Was there another board member that wanted to chime in? Was that Board Member Smith?
Yes. Yes, sorry. And I think what I'm really trying to get to here is not necessarily the complainant, because if we're dealing with a youth, it may be on behalf of that youth. But what we really want to capture here is, so that could be the parents that complain in that instance, right? What we're really trying to get to is the age category of the person who is the subject of the harm that gives rise to the complaint.
Yeah, and I think that's reflected here in the language. I think Board Member Sierra just was seeking that clarification. Any other thoughts on this? Okay, let's move on to the next one. Number 3, post modifies the complaint form used to file complaints under SB2 to allow the complainant to indicate whether the allegation rises from the incident involving a person 17 or younger or between 18 and 24. So this is specific to complaints under SB2. Thoughts around this? Okay. The next recommendation, the legislature amends Penal Code 13510.8 to require consideration of the complainant's age and determining if a peace officer's conduct rises to the level of serious misconduct warranting decertification. Any thoughts about this one? Board Member Bianco.
Yes, I just want to point out there that, I mean, this is, I think I know where this is coming from with the age and talking about youths and everything else, but when we're deciding, or when they are deciding about whether or not something is going to warrant decertification, the totality of what is happening and what happened is taken into consideration, whether it's, I mean, it's anything. It's time of day. It's the location, it's the person, it's the deputy, it's the police officer. Everything is taken into account. So if we're going to say that it just requires the complainant's age, I would say then if we're going to do that, we have to say what is their height and weight, because we can have a 14-year-old that is 6'4", 300 pounds, and no one knows that until after, but then that's going to be labeled as a 14-year-old, and nothing else is taken into consideration when we're doing that. And I'm not saying that you have to do that. I'm saying this is kind of, I don't even think that this should be in there and on there, because everything is taken into consideration when they are deciding this. It's a totality of the circumstances, and age is a natural, obvious indicator of the person that's involved. So that's always going to be there.
Yes, and I don't read this as precluding the totality of the circumstances review. I read this as being explicit about including in that the complainant's age. And if we think it would be helpful to add in that language of consideration of complainant's age in addition to or as part of the totality of the circumstances, if it would clarify, that's a thought as part of the totality. But welcome any thoughts on this. And let's see, Board Member Kulkarni.
Yeah, I mean, I think, what you mentioned earlier, Board Member Guerrera, is that, what is so beneficial about this report is that we have taken a deep dive into issues related to stops of youth. And so one thing that I particularly noted in that the beginning of the report is the phenomenon of adultification, in which part of what we see in the disproportionate stops of African American and Latinx youth is that adultification piece. And so I would be concerned about whether it's here or in other recommendations, adding language that actually gives sort of credence to that. And so I would recommend we stick with the current language as it is written.
What are you doing?
Okay, I mean, I think whether we write it or not, the standard is totality of circumstances. So if that's helpful in keeping that language or not. Any other thoughts? We're not here changing the standard. So I guess I would ask law enforcement members of the board whether it matters to you or not, for purposes of clarity, to include that phrasing, understanding that the standard is a standard for review. We're not changing it.
Well, I guess I'm not going to agree with it regardless, but we just don't see it, I suppose, the way that you all do as far as age and these things. The law is clear. We have to accept complaints. If there's serious misconduct on the part of the officer or the deputy, we have to report it. And now it looks like we're trying to bend that to say, well, it's not serious misconduct if the person's 18 or older, but if it's a child, it is. But the officers in the field don't know their age when they're fighting with some of these people. And oftentimes
Yeah,
our
this
officers are,
Yeah, just to clarify, this isn't stop data. This is different. This is complaint data.
SDQ. Right.
Yeah.
No, I agree. And I'm aware of that. So that's, I think we've already started the game, and we're playing ball, and now we're going back and changing the rules in the middle of the game. And it's this is what gets officers and deputies hurt. When somebody's resisting, When somebody's resisting,
Uh-huh.
then we have to try to figure out their age in the middle of the resistance, and it causes me great concern.
It's the, but I think, I think we're talking about two different things. That the consideration of a complainant's age is not happening in the midst of an incident. It's happening if a complainant, after the incident, a complainant is making a complaint.
Right.
There's a review. It's in the review that this
Right.
recommendation is asking for consideration of the age as part of the
Correct.
totality of the circumstances.
No, I think I'm with you.
Okay.
But the way I'm interpreting it is we're asking a board or some commission to use the complainant's age as a factor
Mhm.
if it's serious misconduct. Am I correct in that?
Right, as one of the factors.
Yeah, that's problematic for us.
lays out- Mhm. What's that?
That's problematic for us. Because
Age
the
is
conduct
problematic.
itself, Andre, should be what's evaluated, not who
Uh-huh.
it was used on.
Yeah, so just to clarify, like the penal code around this, lays out a standard for review, consideration of many factors,
Right.
and this recommendation is to add
Age.
age as one of those factors.
Sure.
So,
I'm just expressing,
yes.
I don't agree, and I think that there's some concerns because you have to remember that we're in the blind. When we're dealing with these incidents, we're in the blind to certain factors that we'll only know after the incident concludes.
Yeah,
That's my
and
concern with it.
okay,
Yeah.
well,
All right.
thank you. I want to give Board Member Bianco an opportunity to speak.
Yes, thank you. I just, in pointing this out, and we're talking about age, and we can talk all day long about the made up word of adultification, but whether a person is 16, 18, or 20 should never come into play when you're trying to determine whether or not you're going to decertify someone. It's the totality of the circumstances, the allegation, and whether or not the person, the officer, did something wrong. Their age, quite frankly, is irrelevant. It's did they do something wrong? And what's the complaint? What was the violation? Did the officer do something wrong? And does that warrant decertification? If you're saying that the age, and you want to take out everything else, and even you put it in there, the age has to be a part of your decision, then you're saying that it's okay to do that activity to an 18-year-old, but not a 16-year-old. And the reality is, it's the actions at the time, the event at the time, and everything at the time. And I mean, if we're going to act like if a 6'5", 300-pound 16-year-old is a child, and we're going to call them a child when they're fighting with a 5'8", 120-pound female, we're fooling ourselves. And so the only thing that we are saying here is words mean things, and when you put wording into something and without context or without a total thing, and then the legislature looks at it and says, oh, this is what they meant, because they have no idea, then bad consequences happen, and then we have unintended consequences from this point forward. And when you're saying you take everything out, really all you have to do is totality of circumstances, because that covers everything. If you're throwing age and you specifically use the word age, then that is what someone is going to key on, and then we're going to say it's okay if he would have done it to an 18-year-old, but he can't do it to a 16-year-old. And
Okay.
we're just saying it's wrong. We get why we're here and what we're talking about, but
Uh-huh.
it's wrong.
Okay, so thank you, Board Member Tulis, Bianco, for sharing your thoughts on this. Board Member Sierra.
Yes, just briefly. I mean, I see this a little differently, that we provided the public and the legislature with a lot of information about, the serious issues about youth and how there might be, different perceptions on youth based along racial and other grounds. And all of this, I think, is saying, based on this, we want to make sure it's considered, it doesn't mean that because it's considered, then that is the result, that you're going to be disciplined differently because the individual was 17 and not 19. I think it's considered. It may be in some instances, given the totality of the circumstances, that isn't really a factor that's going to be that relevant here. But there are going to be other situations where, well, that was a 10-year-old, or that was an 8-year-old. And you know what? In that circumstance, maybe in the totality of the circumstances review, a decision maker may say, well, I think, different de-escalation should have been used, or a different use of force should have been used. So again, to me, this is just saying consider it, but we're not saying it always equals or results in a different type of decision about decertification. That's why I felt like this is just kind of pointing out that we want to make sure that as part of that totality, age at least is considered. That's
Okay. We've heard lots of opinions on this, and we'll circle back to it. If there's anyone who hasn't spoken yet who wants to chime in on this, please raise your hand. Board Member Bianco, I don't know if this is an old hand or a new hand.
Oh, mine's not
Yeah.
showing. Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay. No, that's okay. That's okay. All right, Board Member Kazi, do you want to add to the conversation?
Just a clarifying question for DOJ staff or the members of this committee. I've been looking at this penal code section, and I was just wondering, is there a specific modification to a paragraph that we are looking at? Or are we looking at adding a new paragraph? Because I think that would really help to understand how this would serve in the decertification process. And if we haven't gotten that far, that's fine. I was just wondering if that had been discussed.
Hi, Board Member Kazi. The idea is that it would apply to all of the grounds for decertification in that chapter and not any specific ground.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it seems like you're referring to the grounds under subsection B, and that you
Yes.
would look at the age of the person with respect to dishonesty, with respect to physical abuse, with respect to sexual assault, et cetera, et cetera, et
Yes.
cetera.
Yes. The intent was not to specify any specific ground for decertification under Part B, but to allow the legislature to determine what it would, which subsections it would apply to.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, we've anyone else who has not yet already spoken who wants to add something to the conversation? All right, if not, we really have to start moving now. The fifth recommendation, the post-commission amends Regulation 1205 to require consideration of the complainant's age in determining if a peace officer's conduct rises to the level of serious misconduct that warrants decertification. So this is a recommendation regarding posts regulations to consider age. And I imagine we would have the same set of concerns and issues around this. Board Member Tulise?
Yep. I was just going to resubmit same
Yeah.
points. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, we don't have to rehash in the interest of time, but if anyone has any feedback on this that's specific to post, please offer it. Okay. All right, let's move on. Below our, there was a renewed recommendation, but there's no need to renew recommendations. That's not something we've done before. So, as a as a matter of practice, if a recommendation's been made, we don't need to restate it. We can reframe as if we're providing additional information about it or, underscoring it. But it's not something that we need to vote on. That's my main point. Okay, so let's move to the last set of recommendations. And actually the section, there's a separate section in the report on accountability in SB2. And there are a couple of recommendations there. I'll invite you to read the first one regarding a public awareness campaign. And I invite any thoughts on this. This is a recommendation made by the committee that worked on this. Okay, hearing none, let's move to the next one, which is a recommendation for the legislature to consult with Post, law enforcement agencies, experts, researchers, community groups about harmful conduct by officers that may not fit within the 9 categories of serious misconduct that serves as the basis for Post to suspend or revoke certification. Board Member Sierra.
Yes, on this one, I would, to me, it reads as though as a board, we have done enough work up to feel that there are some additional categories. And what I would propose, and I'm not sure if we're there yet, and this is a very new statute, it's just starting to be implemented. So one suggestion I would have here is for us that we recommend that Post work with us as a board to both identify how this new statute SB2 and Post decertification process could be strengthened, including, exploring whether we should be making recommendations about whether the ground should be modified or expanded. So I would just modify this a bit and then don't yet turn it over to the legislature, but say that this is something that we want to have Post work with us on and more of an exploration, both in terms of strengthening it, if it needs to be strengthened, and whether additional grounds should be provided. So that would be my suggestion.
Do you want to provide clarity on what that looks like in the language?
Again,
I think
okay, we
you're-
could, is that better? Okay.
Yep.
That it could read that that the board recommends that Post work with the RIPA board to identify how SB2 and Post decertification process could be strengthened.
Okay.
We could say, including the exploration of recommendations to the legislature regarding the grounds for decertification and whether they should be expanded or modified. So it's similar, but I think it's signaling more that we have some more work to do on this, but we want Post to engage with us. We want to engage with Post on this.
Okay. Well, DOJ is wordsmithing that you're getting in your recommendation. Board Member Tulise.
Yeah, so I think a board has probably run out of steam when it loses focus on its original purpose. I don't know how, I wasn't here from the beginning, but how did RIPA somehow merge into SB2 and Post training standards? I thought it was racial identity profiling to try to determine stops and stop data. And it seems like more and more the mission creep has turned into SB2 and DCERT, Post. That's all I'm hearing anymore for the last several meetings. And I'll just put on the record that I object to it. And I think that this board should stay to its primary focus, which is stop data. And with that, I'll relinquish my time.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, just for some historical clarity, post has always been a subject matter of the RIPA board since inception. So, but I hear you on staying close to our mission. Board Member Randolph.
Thank you so much, Andrea. And I just have to echo what Chief Talise said is I understand post has always been a subject matter because of their lack of, according to this board, lack of cooperation. But I specifically remember the director on this board call almost a year ago, offering the doors, offering the board to be involved with curriculum and classes. So I really think that's probably changed, but I am concerned that we are now, I mean, the purpose of the RIPA board is to, which we all want to get rid of, is bad cops and racial discrimination and in the state. And now this board is really focusing, if you look at all the work we're doing right now, this is basically a breakdown on Senate Bill 2 now, which is legislation. It's been law. It's been voted in already. And there were mechanics that were put in place by the Assembly and signed off by the governor. And we are doing an extreme overreach. I wanted to put that on record. Thank you.
Okay, so we have a recommendation by Board Member Sierra to really shorten this up. And I don't disagree. Any other thoughts around this? Board Member Kazi.
Just a really quick question, as I am a newer board member. I understand that the recommendations for the civilian complaints also included were regarding a couple of them decertification. So I'm wondering why, or if it's possible to move them here, and because it's just, I'm trying to wrap my brain around all the decertification recommendations and how they all fit together, or do we need to keep it separate so we can kind of track what committee they came from?
Yeah, well, right now they're different sections of the report, different committees, and so that's why they're showing up in this way. We had shared with the DOJ staff already that we were concerned about the structure and length of the post section, and several folks have recommended that they tighten that up a bit. Do you have any specific recommendations around these, or thoughts around these recommendations? This one in particular?
No, not around this one in particular, but just, yeah, if in that reformatting, if it makes sense to combine the recommendations regarding decertification in one place, so it reads better how we're trying to affect PC 13.510.8.
Okay. Okay, great. All right. So any other thoughts around this? If not, we'll move on. Okay, the third recommendation, if DOJ could scroll down, is another amendment to this same penal code section to expand the authority of the post executive director to continue an immediate temporary suspension of an officer where the circumstances indicate that the officer continues to pose a danger to the public, even if one of the statutory grounds for imposing the immediate temporary suspension has been resolved. And I'm aware of the law enforcement, or particularly Board Member Randolph and Tulise's concerns about us getting into amendments on this section. But Board Member Randolph, please.
Thank you so much. I notice on here that the executive director can temporarily suspend. Have you thought about that they already have that authority? I mean, this is already, these mechanisms are already in place.
DOJ or committee board members, do you want to provide some insight here?
But
Okay.
even more so, Andrea, on behalf of the
Yeah.
hundreds of police chiefs and
Uh-huh.
command staff and sheriffs in the state of California, does this board not have the trust in the law enforcement chiefs and sheriffs of the state to take immediate action by placing someone on administrative leave and taking them out of commission so they can't do any harm? Those mechanisms are also in place.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you for sharing that. And invite, DOJ staff to provide any insights into this section.
Yes, the concern with that section has to do with, and these are circumstances that were shared by post in their public meetings and in conversations about the ability to continue a temporary suspension. And for example, a situation might come up where the executive director issues an immediate temporary suspension, somebody goes into a deferred program, but the executive director believes that for the duration of the investigation, that person may still pose a danger to the public. It would allow, or this recommendation would allow the executive director to extend the temporary suspension, even if the legal grounds for that person to not be subject to an immediate temporary suspension no longer exists. It would just be based on the executive director's consideration of the circumstances, indicating that this person continues to pose a danger, even if the technical grounds for them not to qualify for a temporary suspension no longer exists. And I hope that clarifies that concern and why this recommendation was put forward by the subcommittee.
Okay, I'm looking at the clock and I am concerned, and we have some stuff to do, and there are a lot of red flags on this accountability section that have been raised, and so in order for us to make use of our time, I want to recommend that we pause on the accountability section. We open up for public input on anything that we've discussed. We return, or we don't take a break. We come right after public input. We proceed to moving on votes on the policy section and on the post section, on the complaints section. Everything short of the accountability SB2, because we need more time to deliberate that. I don't want to just run roughshod over the things that we've heard. I think we do need to take a step back on all of that. Would you all, fellow board members, would you be okay proceeding in that way? Okay, I'm seeing yes, yes, yes. Any
Yes.
concerns about, okay. All right, then let's move to public comment. And I will invite public comment in the order that I see it. So Michelle Wittig, you're up. And you are muted. Still muted. We're going to come back to you. Karen Glover.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you for all this important work. Always a lot of good thought in these meetings. Thank you. One of the things that didn't come up too much today, but I just wanted to bring it up again. I had offered some public comment earlier about it, and I'm kind of seeing it show itself a bit out there in the world, and that is the integrity of the RIPA data. I study the police, and there is a lot of research about police practices based upon demographic information, the similar ground to what RIPA is doing. And it really aligns with the RIPA data general patterns that y'all are seeing pretty consistently now in several reports. And I just wanted to reiterate that again. And also, one of the ways that scientists check the validity of our data is to do cross checks of data. That is to find other data sets, other research, and see if what we've come up with on a particular study, like the RIPA data, if it is in a line with previous studies, et cetera. And this generally is the case with the RIPA data. And I just wanted to articulate that again for folks. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Glover, Dr. Glover. Michelle, do you want to give it another try? Well, how about this? If you want to type in your comments into the chat, we will capture that. Okay. All right. Richard Hilton. Richard Hilton.
I was muted too. Sometimes I think I live in an alternate universe because I'm listening to these discussions today. These are discussions that I've experienced before, and some of the things that are being said are coming totally out of left field. I think time should be spent educating all of us about the richness of the data that we do already have. We have just about everything that we need to do any analysis that we need to do. The only issue is whether or not the data has integrity, which I assure you it does not. That's a different matter altogether, but it is not a matter that can be ignored. As Dr. Wittig just said, data integrity is everything. I go back to the 580,000 rows of data for mixed race people that can find no matches. It will never find matches in the data that exists in the police departments. And the reason is, on 10 million records that I've looked, except for Sacramento, none of them has a place where a person who is cited or arrested is entered as having been of mixed race. So you will never find them. Now, I'll change subject. With respect to the reports that we see, suddenness is startling. I suggest that all of our reports include all the data that we have so that we can present visuals with trend lines. Trends are everything. We've had people, these are the people at Axios, who claim that they obtained data from the California Department of Justice on 400, not the 549, but 400 LEAs that show that disparities are going down. That is as far from the truth as you can get. Counts are going down or were going down, but disparities have always gone up. I do not know where Axios did this analysis, but the data that it claims to have is false. With respect to data, Many people have said that it is available. I disagree. The Department of Justice has refused me many requests for data, and when they provide faulty data, they have refused to fix it. That is over and above the importunations from the AG, who tells us and instructs them to give us what they are legally obliged to give. So that's it. I
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hilton. Dr. Warren.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for this opportunity. I spoke in June at the meeting, and I want to share with you, based on being from Neighborhood Wellness Foundation, we're located in Del Paso Heights, which is one of the neighborhoods, high violence, high crime, large patterns of disparities. And so we are listed as a community-based organization as an example to improve training as it relates to the racial identity profiling. At the end of the day, for us as Neighborhood Wellness, we work from the granular level to the executive level. I have 125 years of incarceration on my paid staff, those who've had significant experiences with racial profiling, gang violence, incarceration. And we have had a relationship with law enforcement. And it took time, and we're still working on that. We've spent time with them from a domestic violence standpoint. We spent time with them from CPS, from gang violence prevention, working together with community service. We've done healing circles together. We've done barbecues together. But in order for us to make some changes in terms of training, you have to hear from those who live the experience. We can talk academics all day long, but evidence-based isn't always best practices. And best practices aren't always evidence-based. So if we're going to talk about what really works, at the end of the day, we want to stop racial profiling. Why? Because it's wrong. We want to stop racial profiling because it can be dangerous on both sides, right? And so at our end point is we want to improve the interaction and build a relationship between community and law enforcement. And you can't do that unless you're spending time together. You can't do that unless you understand people's experiences. And you can't do that unless we start to be innovative and start looking at from the point of humanity. We all fall outside of our vows in marriage. People do it all the time. So people fall outside their oaths. And so what we should be doing is spending time building relationships and understanding why we do what we do so we can improve delivery of service so it's healthy and safe on both ends of that spectrum, from law enforcement to community. And until we start including community-based organizations such as Neighborhood Wellness, it's going to be difficult to make these changes. Our end point isn't to argue back and forth to see who's right, who's wrong. It is to make an impact. And I think there's an opportunity here when you start to include community-based organizations. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone else from the public who would like to speak who has not already spoken? Was there somebody that wanted to speak?
Well, I think my microphone is now working because I
Okay.
logged off. Okay, so first of all, amen to everything that Dr. Warren just said. As a retired academic, I have some experience with the insufficiencies of academic work. And the first one is this weasel word called evidence-based training. Does the research underlying that training have external validity? Lab-based short-term outcome data does not necessarily generalize to officers embedded in law enforcement agencies working on the job. We know this from the outcome of meta-analyses of years of implicit bias training. This is not a reason to jettison the training, but a reason to temper our expectations of it. Now, with respect to Jack Glazer's recommendation to curtail officer discretion, I have to admit it sounded good, but I'll tell you, it's a non-starter with most officer organizations. A better idea, responsible and justified discretion.
this should be defined by dialogue among all of the stakeholders. The third thing is Jennifer Eberhardsworth with the Oakland Police Department. She brings what she calls a cultural institutional lens. And I think that's well worth considering as a supplement to what we have been doing, which is applying an individual officer deficit lens. This is not to replace it, but to supplement or complement it. That has been dominant in addressing racial disparities, but her lens expands the boundaries of what needs to be fixed and who is responsible for fixing it. Thanks.
Thank you so much. I know that we had written comment that was sent in and shared with all of the board members, so just wanted to state that for the record. Is there anyone else who would like to speak from the public who has not spoken? Okay, then bear with me, my colleagues on the board and members of the public as we get to an endpoint and make some progress here. What we have left is a discussion, or really a vote on recommendations. Let's see how far we can get, and if we need to stop and push things on to another meeting, then we will do that. Department of Justice, can you pull back up the policy recommendations so that we can vote on those? All right. Yeah. Okay. So we've had an opportunity to see these already. I want to invite a motion on the first recommendation.
I'd like to move that we adopt or pass the first recommendation.
Thank you. So the motion is to adopt the first recommendation.
I'd like to second that.
Okay, seconding the motion to adopt the first recommendation. I'd like to call for any discussion. Hearing none, are we ready to vote? Any concerns about proceeding with a vote? Okay, let's vote. DOJ, please call the vote.
At the moment, there are 13 members of the board present. I'm going to go through a roll call vote based alphabetically. Member Bianco.
Yes.
Member Bianco votes yes. Member Diallo.
Yes.
Member Diallo votes yes. Chair Guerrero.
Yes.
Chair Guerrero votes yes. LaWanda Hawkins. LaWanda Hawkins. You're muted. We're unable to hear you. I'll circle back. Member Kennedy.
Yes.
Member Kajabi.
Yes.
Member Kulkarni.
Yes.
Member Kazi.
Yes.
Member Randolph.
Yes.
Co-Chair Sierra.
Yes.
Member Smith.
Yes.
Member Tulise.
Yes.
Board Member Bang.
Yes.
The ayes have it. It was passed unanimously by the 13 board members.
Thank you. I'd like to invite a motion on the second recommendation.
I'll make a
Move to
motion.
adopt the second recommendation.
Who
And I'll
is that?
second that.
Who moved it?
Member Diallo.
Oh, Member Diallo, thank you. I can't see everybody on my screen. Okay, so I heard Member Diallo make a motion to adopt the second recommendation. I heard Member or Board Chair Sierra second that motion to adopt the second recommendation. Are we ready for a vote? Anyone concerned about?
Can I ask a procedural question? Is it, with the sense that this particular bundle of motions, there was general support for, I'm wondering if it's possible to group them, although I know that might not be possible in general, but I also see Board Member Bianco's hand was up.
I think it's in our interest to move one by one since we started
Okay,
that way.
all right, off we go.
But yeah, Board Member Bianco.
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing. I timed the last one. It was 3 minutes and there was 24 of them. So we're going to be here over an hour.
Yeah, no,
of-
we're not because we have to end in 15 minutes. So,
But like Lily said, I think we already discussed all of these. And to be honest with you, I think everyone's voting yes on all of them. And if there was one that you wouldn't, you vote no, but it's going to pass anyway.
okay, let me do this. So we already have a motion is the issue and the concern here. So maybe we can do it for the last two. So when I invite the motion can come as two. So let's just very quickly, because we already have a motion and a second on this one, we have to proceed. DOJ, call the vote.
Member Bianco,
Yes.
Member Diallo,
Yes.
Member Guerrero,
Yes.
Member Hawkins, Member Hawkins, Member Kennedy,
Yes.
Member Kajabi,
Yes.
Member Kulkarni,
Yes.
Member Causey,
Yes.
Member Randolph,
Yes.
Member Sierra,
Yes.
Member Smith,
Yes.
Member Tulise.
Yes.
Thank you. I know you're driving. Member Bang.
Yes.
We have 13 yeses and 1 no vote. So this motion passes.
Okay, I invite a motion on the last two, the third and the fourth recommendation.
I'd like to move we consider the third and fourth both to pass them.
Board Member Kajabi has moved that we adopt the third and fourth
I
recommendations.
will second it. Chad Bianco will second.
Okay, I hear second on the motion to adopt the third and fourth recommendations. Any discussion? DOJ, call a vote.
Member Bianco,
Yes.
Member Diallo,
Yes.
Member Guerrero,
Yes.
Member Hawkins, Member Kennedy,
Yes.
Member Kajabi,
Yes.
Member Kulkarni,
Yes.
Member Causey,
Yes.
Member Randolph,
No.
Member Sierra,
Yes.
Member Smith,
Yes.
Member Tulise,
No.
and Member Bang.
Yes.
So with 13 members present, there was 1 no vote, 2 noes, 10 yeses. So with 10, it passes.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, looking at the clock, we have 13 minutes. I don't know if we can group these, but I will invite a motion either on one or a set or the whole.
I would like, Board Member Bianco, I'd like to make a motion. We'll make it easier so it's not the entire thing, but on 1 through 10 that we, I would make a motion that we approve items 1 through 10 that fall under our heading here of the post chapter and recommendations to the legislator.
Okay, so I hear a motion to approve the recommendations to the legislature on post, correct? Right. These are the recommendations to the legislature. Board Member Sierra?
I mean, I just have a point for clarification. I thought our number 1, we were taking off the table because it was based on a past recommendation. So it'd be
Yes, yes, that's why I stated the motion as recommendations made to the legislature. So it begins at the number 2, new recommendations. How about we say it that way? New recommendations to the legislature as presented on the screen, which is numbered in this document 2 through 10.
I will second that.
Okay. The motion on the table is adopt the recommendations, new recommendations to the legislature 2 through 10. Any discussion? DOJ, call the vote.
Member Bianco,
Yes.
Member Diallo,
Yes.
Member Guerrero,
Yes.
Member Kennedy,
Yes.
Member Hawkins, Member Kajabi,
Yes.
Member Kulkarni,
Yes.
Member Kazi,
Yes.
Member Randolph,
Yes.
Member Sierra,
Yes.
Member Smith,
Yes.
Member Tulives,
No.
and Member Vang.
Yes.
So there are 13 members present, 1 no vote, and 1 non-vote, to be clear. So the motion passes.
Thank you. Okay, we're 9 minutes out from the close of this meeting. There were 3 additional recommendations in this section, and they were recommendations to post. I want to invite a motion on one or all or some subset.
I'll make a motion to adopt recommendations 1, 2, and 3 under recommendations to post.
Can I just clarify that the LD3 and LD42 were going to be spelled out?
Is that?
I know it wasn't
Yeah,
entered here. I heard the spirit of that in our discussion.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the question that I didn't know the answer to was, is this an acronym that's already been spelled out somewhere? But it would benefit from being spelled out here. So we have a motion. Yes.
So these are, so I'm understanding these are clear to post. Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry.
So the motion I just heard was motion from Board Chair Sierra to adopt the first, second, and third recommendations with words spelled out, learning domain spelled out. Yeah.
And I would like to second that motion. This is Board Member Kulkarni.
Board Member Kulkarni seconds the motion to approve the first through third recommendations with everything spelled out. Do we have any discussion?
I don't know if that makes, I have discussion. This is Board Member
Okay.
Talese. I think the motion can lead to confusion, because are we voting yes because we want the word spelled out, or are we voting yes because we like recommendation 1, 2, 3? And so I think the first thing, it should have been a recommendation to approve them as a slate for one, and then a second that, then we can either vote on them as a slate or not, but
Okay, so just, okay, how about you amend the, you offer an amendment?
my offer is that we vote on recommendations 1, 2, 3 as a slate to approve as is, and give DOJ the authority to do any minor language cleanup.
Okay, do we have a second on that proposed amendment?
Second.
This is
Oh, sorry.
Board Member Kulkarni, second, if I'm allowed to.
Yes, okay, so we will vote on that motion then. DOJ, can you call that vote?
Member Bianco,
No.
Member Bianco votes no. Member Diallo,
Yes.
Member Diallo votes yes. Member Guerrero,
Yes.
Member Hawkins, Member Kennedy,
Yes.
Member Kennedy votes yes. Member Kajabi,
Yes.
Member Kajabi votes yes. Member Kulkarni,
Yes.
Member Kulkarni votes yes. Member Kazi,
Yes.
Member Kazi votes yes. Member Randolph,
No.
Member Randolph votes no. Member Sierra,
Yes.
Member Sierra votes yes. Member Smith,
Yes.
Member Smith votes yes. Member Tulise,
No.
Member Tulise votes no. Member Vang,
Yes.
Member Vang, yes. Member Vang votes yes. With 13 members present, 1 person who did not vote, and 3 noes, the motion passes.
Okay, folks, I think that's as far as we can get. We'll have to table the vote and discussion of the complaint section recommendations in another meeting. We don't have enough time in this meeting. So I want to thank everyone for hanging in here for the discussion and the vote, getting as far as we did. In terms of next steps, there will need to be consideration of the remaining recommendations at a next meeting, and we'll leave it to Department of Justice to agendize that. Anything else that the Department of Justice wants to add before we close?
Nothing to add before we close. Just really want to thank all of the members for the board for staying on for this and the engagement of everyone. And especially thank you to members of the public. We couldn't do this without you, and this report is for you. And so we really do appreciate your participation and staying with us during this meeting. So thank you all.
Great. The board chair, co-chair, Ciara, is there anything you want to add before we close?
No, just again, thank you to everybody and really appreciate all the really robust discussion today.
Okay, so I would just ask board members and members of the public to think about what we have left pending complaints. There was a lot of discussion, a lot of thought. It would be really helpful if when you came back, you had clarity about what you think should happen with that section, those recommendations, so we can have the discussion we need to determine whether to adopt those recommendations or not. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.